From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Stefania Bravo, and this is From the South. The case of a young Mapuche shot by the police in Chile has begun. Brandon Hernandez Huentecol was left with his hip destroyed and 80 pellets in his body after the incident. Our correspondent, Paula Dragnik, brings us up to date.
After 2 years of waiting, the hearing of the young Mapuche Brandon Hernandez Huentecol has begun in Chile. 2 years ago, this young Mapuche man was attacked by an officer of the National Police Force. He survived, but was shot at close range, destroying his hip. The violent event also left about 80 pellets in his body. The hearing will be extensive as 5 or 6 witnesses are expected to testify on the case. Brandon belongs to an evangelical community and had been protesting against the police force unit. In today's testimonies, the court saw the shotgun that was used. In the coming days, Brandon and his mother are expected to testify. They both refused to talk to the press, but it is said they are asking the officer that shot the Mapuche man to be sentenced to 10 years in prison.
And Peru's Attorney General Pedro Chavarry has withdrawn an order to remove 2 key investigators of the Odebrecht case. Just before, President Martín Vizcarra arrived in Congress to ask for a state of emergency to be declared in the Attorney General's office. If a state of emergency is declared, it would allow Vizcarra to make changes to personnel who can advance the investigation. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has the details.
A few minutes ago, President Martín Vizcarra arrived here at the National Congress. He is set to give a press conference to explain more about this decision regarding the state of emergency at the Attorney General's office and the possible resignation of the Attorney General, Pedro Chavarry, who, in order to avoid his resignation, has backed down in his decision to dismiss 2 investigators in the Lava Jato investigation. Prosecutors Rafael Vela and José Domingo Pérez will continue investigating the scandal, which has put opposition leader Keiko Fujimori under preventive detention and led former President Alan Garcia to be barred from leaving the country. This leaves some questions in the air as to whether President Vizcarra will continue with his legal motion, but people protesting in the streets and in front of Congress continue to demand he declares the state of emergency in the Attorney General's office, and that he asks for the resignation of the Attorney General. People say Chavarry is benefiting certain political actors linked to the Lava Jato corruption case. Some political parties, like Frente Amplio, suggested a speed-up of the legal process so they could start debating the law project in less than 2 days. There are more demonstrations planned for tomorrow and Friday, in Lima and in other cities across the country.
And meanwhile, hundreds protested on Tuesday night in Lima to show their outrage at the Attorney General's decision. Despite backing down from his decision, people have continued to demand that Pedro Chavarry be dismissed. And staying in Peru, indigenous communities and social organizations have said that 2018 was a bad year for the country's indigenous people. They condemned the violations to their rights and the plunder of natural resources.
That's the main conclusion of the latest Indigenous Peoples Report, drawn up by the National Coordinator of Human Rights. The impacts have been borne by the native communities, especially those located in the Peruvian Amazon.
Social, environmental, cultural and economical impact, especially on women. First of all, it generates separation and confusion among communities, since these enterprises offer jobs. And if the enterprise's goal is not part of the community's plan, there is always going to be these kind of changes.
Extractive projects that, according to specialized organizations, are imposed by force without previous consultation, and in some cases, a state of emergency and military forces have been used.
Basic rights like people's free transit or peaceful gatherings that are usual in the communities are withheld. Often those territories are unnecessarily militarized. All of this in favor of the industry's interest. They don't know what they are harming their human rights.
Extractive activities that in the last 3 years have been causing several oil leaks, poisoning water resources and arable land. Those responsible for this haven't been sanctioned yet.
This
This is a dramatic situation. Water sources are contaminated, as well as fish and in many cases, even people, in Chiriaco's case. A complete cleaning had to be done after oil leaked out. More than 300 people are severely sick due to the lack of protection during the cleaning.
A situation that could be solved by identifying more than 5,000 indigenous communities which have no recognition over their territories, as well as the lack of health services and preservation of their native languages, since their budget has been cut off by 50%.
The construction company Odebrecht has agreed to pay close to $40 million to the Brazilian state company Eletrobras. Officials from Eletrobras said this payment is related to losses over the construction of 2 hydroelectric dams. The payment is a result of an agreement signed by Odebrecht and authorities to end the investigation against the company. And Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has issued an executive order that can fatally harm the Amazon rainforest. The new president has transferred the regulation and creation of new indigenous reserves to the Agriculture Ministry. But conservatives fear this will convert the Amazon into farmland. Bolsonaro defended the move, saying large areas of the rainforest are controlled by just a few people, referring to indigenous communities. President Bolsonaro has also signed a decree to remove a section guaranteeing the rights of the LGBTQ community from the country's human rights guidelines. The provisional measure indicates that the recently established Ministry of Women, Family and Human Rights won't have a specific branch for the LGBTQ people. Bolsonaro has promised to withdraw his country's signature from the newly signed Migration Pact. He announced this during a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Brasilia. The pact, which aims to protect the rights of migrants and encourage lawful migration, was approved in December. Countries such as Chile, Italy, and Israel withdrew from the agreement. Meanwhile, the new economy minister, Paulo Guedes, has vowed to accelerate the privatization of the country's state companies and reduce social spending.
The first big expenditure, which is social security, is the first big challenge to face. It is the biggest challenge to be faced. If this challenge is successful, then in 2 or 3 months, we will have 10 years of sustainable growth ahead of us.
Privatization, austerity, and the extension of the agricultural and mining frontier onto indigenous land. These are some of the priorities of the new government in Brazil. People want solutions to the economic crisis, but do they think these policies will achieve them? Our team in Sao Paulo went to find out.
With 12% of the population unemployed and a similar proportion in informal work, the new government faces the challenge of kick-starting the economy.
We need a government that will govern better and make us happier. Look at the shops. Nobody is buying anything.
Despite the failure of President Temer's neoliberal policies, the new economy minister, Paulo Guedes, is promising to take this approach further. One of his first aims will be to seek support in Congress for a pension reform, one modeled on Chile's private pension scheme introduced by the Pinochet dictatorship.
All governments think of themselves, not of the people. We have a big problem with this new government, which wants to take away all our rights. With their proposals, the workers' right to retire and decent life is disappearing.
Bolsonaro's promise to criminalize the homeless and landless movements. In a country, a housing deficit of 6 million homes suggests social conflicts are set to increase.
Under Bolsonaro, we will not see the same kind of democracy, which was already limited. He wants to outlaw social movements. The challenge for this year will certainly be for the movements to resist and keep defending people's rights.
Minorities have a slogan for what lies ahead. Don't let go of anyone's hand.
We will resist. We know that with Bolsonaro, we will face many attacks against us LGBT, against blacks and the indigenous, who are the true owners of the land. There will be all kinds of repression against people who are already oppressed. So nobody should let go of anyone's hand. We need to be united.
The decision by opposition lawmakers to stay away from Bolsonaro's swearing in shows that the new government's plans will not get a free ride on the streets.
I would really like to be optimistic and think that the government will be reasonable. But I know it won't be. It's a corrupt, authoritarian, and incapable government. Bolsonaro will throw Brazil into a social and economic crisis, set the place on fire, and it won't last a year like that.
Brazil is entering a new phase of the neoliberal experience and a political break with the last 30 years of democratization. 2019 will show whether the strength developed in the struggle for social rights will be enough to confront the return to power of those schooled by the military and civilian dictatorship.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Colombian President Iván Duque and the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met to talk about migration and organized crime. Pompeo reassured continuous financial and humanitarian aid on issues of migration in Colombia. Duque thanked the U.S. for its help fighting the increase of cocaine production. Both met in the Colombian city of Cartagena to commemorate 200 years of diplomatic ties. Social organizations and victims of the internal conflict in Colombia have mixed views about the effectiveness of the special jurisdiction for peace in its 6 months of operation.
One of the issues at the heart of the peace agreement is the extrajudicial court system known as the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, where persons who committed various crimes during the armed conflict are tried.
The signatories of the peace treaty have reiterated the measures outlined in the peace accord, among them the right to real justice, reparations, and guarantees to avoid repetition. In that sense, 2019 will be the year to move forward and continue to bring to fruition the measures agreed to in the peace pact there. And a fundamental component of the agreement is the special peace jurisdiction.
When it comes to the special peace jurisdiction, some analysts are taking a decidedly wait-and-see approach. This is because paramilitary groups are happy about it.
The next step is for the court to make public the outcomes of cases which have already been tried. The challenges so far have been many. There are still a lot of hurdles to overcome, especially with the current government and specific demands coming from all sides. But so far, overall, the court has been functioning fairly well, and hopefully an agreement can soon be reached with the prosecutor's office.
Victims of state crimes in particular still face many challenges under this judicial system.
The court, in delivering justice, must treat perpetrators of state crimes just as it would those who have committed other serious criminal acts. We've not been seeing this, and this is why there is no end to the killings and injustice. You see, in many instances, the masterminds behind these state crimes are persons from the upper echelons of society.
The Special Justice for Peace closes this year with 32 ex-combatants having appeared before the courts. This includes ex-combatants of the FARC, also 2 state military commanders like Torres Escalante and Mario Montoya. Crimes against indigenous people and extrajudicial executions have been a priority of investigations.
5 men have been arrested in Argentina for allegedly gang raping a 14-year-old girl. Those arrested are between the ages of 21 and 23. The attack took place on New Year's Eve near the coastal city of Miramar. According to the police report, the girl's parents found her drugged in a tent surrounded by the alleged perpetrators. They will appear in court for the first time on Wednesday. A social organization in Argentina which advocates for political prisoners has demanded that all social leaders currently behind bars be set free.
Ever since Mauricio Macri became president, Argentina has become a living hell for members of the opposition. We are in a state of emergency, in a state where all rights are being violated. The principle of innocence, of due process and individual guarantees. They can't take away our fundamental rights to complete with political strategy that is there to annihilate the opposition. Arbitrary imprisonment and ferocious persecution were common in order to implement a model of social exclusion.
The strategic allies of this government, of the oligarchy, they work through justice and through massive and monopolistic means. Ours is an act of defense for our companions who have been detained. We, the majority, we remain expectant because we have been resisting, confronting and fighting for more than 3 years.
According to social leaders, all Argentinians are political prisoners, not just the over 30 detained by the Cambiemos alliance.
We are not living under the rule of law. There are no constitutional guarantees. Today they can burst through your door, they can put you in jail, and they will explain some made-up reason up as to why. They send 4 or 5 people who are actually legal hitmen. This issue extends to the Supreme Court of Justice, which doesn't do anything.
Lawmaker Lauro Grande warns that 2019 will be marked by defamatory campaigns and political media and legal operations against Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, who is likely to run for re-election during next year's general elections.
They have threatened her, extorted it, and her children. Every day, the covers of all Magneto-owned publications say that finally she will be imprisoned. They chase after her relentlessly. They spy on her. They broadcast her private phone conversations nationwide, trying to scare her, but she's not afraid. She's still fighting, building a great national front.
A broad, patriotic front that, according to the activists, will overcome Macri in next year's elections in order to return the constitutional rights and guarantees to the Argentinian people.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador wants to recruit 50,000 young people for the country's new National Guard. The establishment of the new National Guard is still being debated in Congress as it requires a constitutional reform. If approved, the recruitment could happen over the coming 3 to 4 years. The National Guard aims to fight the growing violence in the country. In 2017, Mexico registered over 30,000 homicide cases, the highest rate in the last 2 decades. A mayor has been killed in the southern Mexican state of Oaxaca 1 hour after taking office. 2 men allegedly shot Mayor Alejandro Aparicio in the middle of the street. The state attorney's office has said they've started an exhaustive investigation into the murder. 1 person has already been arrested. Close to 400 migrants have died while trying to cross the U.S.-Mexican border in 2018. According to the organization Lost Migrants Project, 376 people lost their lives trying to make their way to the U.S. The project collects data of people killed in transportation accidents, shipwrecks, violent attacks, and medicinal complications. They also recorded the deaths of unidentified bodies found on the migration route. Jamaica's ban on single-use plastic is now in force. Manufacturers, importers, and distributors have been reminded of the ban on single-use plastic bags and disposable plastic straws. Retailers with small stocks of plastic bags can continue using them until their alternative packaging shipments arrive. A similar measure also took effect on January 1st in Dominica and Turks and Caicos.
Unused inventories of these items.
The Speaker of the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis has been accused of colluding with the government. The opposition accused the House Speaker of blocking a no-confidence debate against the Prime Minister last week. The motion was filed against Prime Minister Timothy Harris after the opposition accused him of putting his family and friends in key government positions. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. People have built a memorial in front of the apartment block that had collapsed in Russia, killing 31 residents. Dozens of people created the makeshift memorial with flowers, stuffed animals, and toys. Meanwhile, emergency service workers continue their recovery efforts on site.
It is impossible not to come here. It is a shared grief. It is frightening. We never thought that this could happen in our own town. It is impossible not to come here, to pay respects to the dead. It's a terrible pain.
The Lebanese political party Hezbollah and the Prime Minister-designate have said a unity government will be formed soon. Since winning the elections 8 months ago, the Hezbollah group has been in negotiations with political factions. However, parties have been wrangling over cabinet seats. Lebanon has a political system in which religious communities share power. Despite these setbacks, the vice president of the political council is saying a solution is very close.
And then we go back.
The government of Israel has announced plans to worsen the conditions for Palestinians held in its prisons. Some of the measures announced include limiting the amount of water a prisoner can consume in a day, cutting visits by family members, and preventive members of Israel's parliament from visiting Palestinian soldiers. Thousands of Palestinians, including 230 children, are held in Israeli prisons. An Iraqi Kurdish activist is on a crusade to eradicate female genital mutilation, widely practiced in Iraq's autonomous Kurdistan region. Rasul, who herself went through the process at a young age, challenges the perception that genital mutilation is mandated by Islam. She also warns midwives about infections and the emotional trauma the practice causes on women. Victims of genital mutilation are between 4 and 5, but could be affected for years because of bleeding, reduced sexual sensitivity, childbirth, complications, and depression.
In light of the law combating domestic abuse, we are presenting a seminar for women in this village revolving around the harm of female genital mutilation from legal, religious, and social aspects, as well as explaining the health damages female genital mutilation causes.
2 Indian women have entered a Hindu temple in the state of Kerala, previously closed to women of menstruating age. The ban was overturned by the Supreme Court, but protests against women entering continued. Earlier, millions of women from a range of sectors, including government workers and students, took part in a rally to call for gender equality. A number of women who tried to reach the temple were attacked by men opposing their presence. Former Republican presidential candidate Mitt Romney has accused U.S. President Donald Trump of causing dismay across the world. In an opinion piece in the Washington Post, Romney said Trump's actions and conduct in the last 2 years indicates that he has failed to rise to the mantle of the office he holds. Trump responded on a tweet asking Romney to focus on areas where he can be useful. NASA has released pictures of what it claims to be the most distant object encountered by humankind until now. The ice mass is shaped like a snowman and was spotted 6.5 billion kilometers away from the Earth. NASA confirmed on Tuesday that its spacecraft flew past the object located in the solar system's outermost region. The previous record of the most distant space exploration was the encountering of planet Pluto in 2015. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South,